Hi there, my name is Cole, and today we're going to be building the Mercedes-Benz CLK GTR in LEGO. Before we start, if you'd like to build this model yourself, you can get the instructions for it at my website, MCGWERKS.com, in the link in the description below. You get the instructions for both this and the racing version in the D2 Privat livery. You can also get the XML parts lists for them if you'd like to check the price of the parts. That is all linked in the description, and now let's get on to the actual model. So, a brief history of the CLK GTR. Basically, in the late 90s, you had the GT1 racing, the FIA GT Championship. So around 1996 or 7, I think, the McLaren F1 GTR was the big car. It had won Le Mans, and Porsche had built the 911 GT1 to compete with it. Mercedes saw the 911 GT1 and said, okay, now we want to build our own car. It looks kind of like a road car to go racing in the GT Championship. And so they did, and they had the CLK GTR. Now I believe it's said that they designed and built the CLK GTR in 128 days. Basically, they bought a McLaren F1, which is one of the better racing cars at the time, and they just ripped the insides out and put Mercedes insides. Or maybe that's probably a bit of an exaggeration. I don't know, they at least put a Mercedes motor and probably a bunch of other Mercedes things inside it to test them. And then they took them all out and they sold the car later, and the McLaren, they converted it back to its stock form completely, which is really weird to think about. Either way, it did result in the CLK GTR, which did pretty decent in most racing in 1997. Next year, Mercedes wanted to try and do a bit better, and so they made the CLK LM. That car won every single race in the series that year, and then the FIA was like, okay, this is pointless to keep this series going, and eventually canceled it because of the CLK GTR and LM and CLR that came later. This is not the car that went flying into the air in that one video. That was the CLR, I believe. Either way, all that to say, CLK GTR is an extremely cool car. So now we're gonna go back to putting this car together so you guys can see how it goes together. So let's go ahead to that. Alright guys, we're gonna start putting together the CLK GTR. I already designed it digitally, we're just gonna be putting it together now. Alright, so we've attached a couple parts, basically just stuff to connect the front on there. It's kind of an interesting assembly here. Most of this is pretty standard, but I wanted to highlight the rear diffuser we're going to build now. This part, which is our first element, and that is, I believe this is like the oil thing in the engine bay. This does have an engine bay, so it's a cool kind of hidden feature, and you'll see it come together here. And then we have this rear part with some antennas on it that represent some sort of suspension part. I don't quite remember which one. Try and get that in there. One hand, like so. And then we have the exhausts, and the CLK GTR has these really interesting exhausts. I think look extremely cool. So to represent them, we have this combination of parts. Can I try and, there we go. So you can see a 1x2 tile. Underneath is a clip. Then there's a round tile with a bar sticking out, and then one of these round plates with a bar upside down. Shout out to Bricko from Lego Car Building for helping me come up with this design, or for coming up with this design entirely on their own. But we shall attach one of these, just like that. Boom, look at that. And then when we build the rest of it and we get the engine cover on here, this is going to look really sick. Actually, I was going to go to tile apps, but let's just keep going the engine bay because it looks really cool. So we're going to start with adding some hinge bricks. We'll get one right there. We'll get some tiles, and these will form what I believe are the valve covers. I always like build engines and I'm like, wait, what was this supposed to represent? But I believe these are your valve covers on your engine. And then we'll add some headers, which are quite simply formed with the very handy tap piece, and we'll try and get that right there. Two more on this side. This is by no means the best engine bay. There are much better engine bay builders out there, but just because I thought this CLK GTR is a really cool looking race car engine bay, and I did kind of an okay one in the F50 GT, I'll try a little bit harder with this one. So I also decided as I was designing this that because of the detailed engine bay and because of the real CLK GTR's rear clamshell kind of feature, I thought I would like to try and build that on this model. I've seen many people do it and it looks really cool, and so I decided to do it here. And so one of the main parts of that is that we cannot have, the fenders can't connect because the whole fenders are going to have to detach from, or like they can't be connected to anything because otherwise I'll have to rip them off, and it's going to, a whole bunch of parts are going to fly off and it's not going to be fun to take it off. Which means that instead of the standard, like this Technic brick to hold the wheels on, we're going to have to do something without studs on the top. And really the only way to do that, maybe there are a couple other ways, but one of the best ways and simplest ways is just this. This is two Technic bricks and then two Technic connectors in the ends. So it's the axle in the exact, or axle holder in the exact same place, and does not have any studs on top, so that can go right in the center here. Boom, just like so. Looks very nice. I'll add some suspension detail with the springs. This is quite simply one of those 1x1 plates with a bar, and then two 1x1 round plates with a hole stacked on it, like so. And then to finish off the kind of engine bay area, we have this, and that will go right on top of the valve covers there to form the roof intake, or at least like the part that the roof intake connects to. And with that, we have our little engine bay, nothing too fancy, and the lighting here doesn't help at all, but it does look cool. And so let's continue to build around here. Alright, so now we get to one of the more complicated parts of this build, even though it's one of my favorites. So we have this very new, relatively new, it's not that new actually, rounded plate. And we have these other new pieces. We have to order so many new pieces for this one, or relatively new pieces. Jumper round plate and then tile round, not a plate but a tile. And they all line up quite nicely just like that. And we're going to get the smaller headlight, which is one of these Technic quarter pin I believe, and then a like Technic 1 spacer thingy. And this goes into the bottom of a headlight brick, like so. And the headlight brick goes right on here, if I can manage that with one hand, like so. And for the outer headlight, we have one of these 2/3 1x1 bricks, I guess we're going to call them, and then a round tile on the front. That's going to go right there. We got a Technic brick. We have an inverted curved slope and a 1x1 tile underneath it, and those are going to go into the Technic brick, and then this whole thing is going to go next to this headlight on the plate. Next, underneath, we're going to get another one of these 1x1 and 2/3 studs on the side parts, the D-snot as so many call it these days, and put it right under there. We'll get a 1x1 or 1x2 plate and cover up the side, just like that. To connect all that to the actual body of the car, we have another Technic brick on a plate, or on a brick I guess. On top of that, we're getting another curved slope, just like that. Look at that. And then that is going right on the front of this thing. We'll get that in place, we'll get a couple more things in place, and I'll update you guys again when I work on something more interesting to talk about. Alright, I have designed a door slash side panel, and I'm going to show you guys how it goes together because it's kind of interesting. So first up, we're starting with this tile and plate, and that's going upside down. Then we're taking some bricks with studs on two sides. These guys are going sideways on there, like that. I'm putting this guy in there for the intake that's indented in the side. Now this is not the perfect intake shape, but I messed with a bunch of things and just like this one's good because it was going to be a pain to get anything else in there. Then we have this whole bit up top, which has a bunch of plates on it to make sure it connects. So this goes right on top and just sandwiches the whole thing together. There we go, look at that. And then we have this little thing that just goes straight onto the side right here, like so. And it actually sits, one of the reasons for doing this side upside down technique is because it sits half a plate lower, as does the front bumper. But I built a few cars with the super low sides and bumpers, and they look really cool. So this one now sits lower. Alright, both sides are on, and it's actually looking quite cool. Now you're kind of starting to see a real CLK GTR. If you've seen a picture of a real CLK GTR, the rear clamshell off, it's going to look more and more like that. I would have made the front clamshell come off, except that this is way too complicated. Maybe not actually. Maybe I could have made it come off, but I didn't really want to bother trying. The interior is also mostly done. Actually, it's all done with the steering wheel and two dark blue seats, because some Mercedes have this really cool kind of plaid, I think it's plaid, seat material in there, and so I think that's kind of a cool little detail to have. So now we're going to build the rear clamshell, and that's going to connect right here and sit. Just going to connect in one place so it's easy to remove, and it's going to sit on top, and we're going to start putting it together right now. And there we have the rear clamshell. It's looking very sleek and bathtub-like now, but I think it looks very good. And it's removable. You can just pull up on it and it comes off very easily. It just connects right there. I might update this connection point in the instructions because it's not the strongest, but it is strong enough that it'll stay there and very easy to remove still. And you can see the wheel would connect right down there. Very nice. And so I'm just going to finish it up. Just have to add the roof basically, which is not incredibly interesting. And it'll be done. So with that, we have our finished CLK GTR, and I am super happy with how it's turned out. It's a nice balance of being clean and detailed, I think. I'm pretty happy with how the front turned out, especially the headlights, which I think I was able to capture fairly well. I think it's cool that I was able to use a similar headlight technique to my Mercedes E-Class model. Technically, at that time, the E-Class, the CLK, and the CLK GTR would have shared some same headlight components in real life, so I think it's very cool that the models share them as well. And yeah, overall, I'm quite happy how the shaping turned out in this model. Now, of course, I built this car kind of with the intention of making the racing version eventually. Here you can see me taking it apart and attempting to build the livery into it, or well, to put the livery on it. I already designed it at this point, and I was just trying to build it. This was a pain to do because I was trying to search for parts at the same time. And eventually I just got bored and stopped filming it. So with that, let's go to a clip from a little while back in the past where I go over this model when it was in its racing form. Alright, so here we have the finished CLK GTR race car over here somewhere. Like I gotta say, I'm quite happy with it, even for one of these kind of abstract brick-built liveries. I think it looks pretty good. Now, the changes that have been made to the, well, compared to the road car versions, obviously the sides have been changed up a bit. So the livery's on there, and the D2 Privat logo on both sides, a representation of it anyway. I think it looks fairly good. Dark blue and red and the light gray is a really nice combination. On the front you have a couple more bits of color for various logos, as well as on the hood. It's been rebuilt so that it integrates the D2 logo on there, which I think actually turned out quite nicely. It doesn't exactly look like letters and numbers D and 2, but it does look like the logo if you know what you're looking for. The front fender has been changed because this one does not have the standard mirrors. The CLK GTR and I think the LM and the CLR also have these bright yellow mirrors that are mounted up on the A-pillars of the car, and so they're represented here with these little clip pieces. The wing has been swapped out, and so kind of the whole rear deck has been changed from the big swoopy stock wing to a race car wing. It's kind of an unusual design despite the fact that it doesn't look that unusual. It's 7 studs wide, but it's closer to 8 with the end plates on it. It's got this weird kind of bracket design holding it up. It's not perfect, but I do like it, and it's a bit different than most of my other wing designs, so I think it looks pretty good. Around the rear is a tiny little representation of the D2 logo, which I was fairly happy with, just some round tiles. And altogether, I do like quite a bit. I think I'll be keeping this version up on my shelf with the other 90s race cars, or well, there's mostly 90s race cars, I guess, but the various race cars that are up there. All right, so there you have the race car, the road car, completed models. Like I said, if you want to build it yourself, the instructions are available. The link is in the description to the website. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to see some other cars built, let me know in the comments, because I used to get a lot of requests. I guess I didn't do any of the requests, and now I don't get any more requests, but honestly at this point I'd kind of like to start doing, if a bunch of you guys want to see one car, I prefer that, as opposed to like a whole bunch of you suggesting really specific cars, because then it's like, well, which one of these really specific cars do I do? But if there's some kind of generally car that you all want to see, maybe check if somebody else has already left that comment and agree with them. That is it for today. I hope you will return for the next video.